This is the Leadership Podcast, and we study leaders. This is episode 465, featuring Dr. Andreas Stamatis, professor at UofL and mental toughness expert. Thank you for joining us today. This is Jim Vasilopoulos, founder of Rafty Advisors, and this is the Leadership Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Jan Rutherford, founder of Self-Reliant Leadership. Thanks for making us a part of your day as we study leaders, and we're getting close to 500 episodes. And all those episodes can be found at theleadershippodcast.com. And as you know, if you're a frequent listener to our show, our sponsor is Darley, and Darley's mission supports all our military and first responders with the equipment they need to ensure mission success, whether that's a water pump, a drone, or emergency medical supplies. Learn more about this great company and the people surrounding our nation's heroes at darley.com. Darley, you serve others, we serve you.
Today we have a very special guest, a friend of mine from here in Louisville. Met him at the University of Louisville Center for Positive Leadership. His name is Dr. Andreas Stamatis. He's a professor at the University of Louisville and a mental performance specialist at UofL Health, doing some really interesting stuff, blending sports science, psychology, and leadership to help individuals and organizations thrive under pressure. Andreas, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jan. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Yeah, let's have some fun. It will be a great opportunity to talk about things that we all appreciate and like and try to improve.
Yeah. What's also, I'm going to ask you what's not in the bio, some stuff we can't find out about you online, but one of the things is that you're Greek, you're from Greece, and that's one of those things that Jan and I have a little competition going on for our guests from our heritage. But tell us something about you that we wouldn't be able to find out online.
Well, I am Greek, and I'm really proud to say that I was a member of the Greek Special Forces, Green Beret. That's something you don't see on my professional CV, but that's something very interesting. And actually, that kind of connects with what I do, because when I did join them, in the first 2 hours, I realized that physical toughness would not be the key to stay there, and it was something else, because they were really trying to break us from the very first moment, mentally, psychologically. So that's something you won't find on my CV, and it's definitely related to what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting if you don't know anything about Greece. Big talk these days about Europe and not being very militarized or not being very defense postured, but Greece, because of its long history with some local adversaries and some even, conflicts when I was a young boy that I remember quite fondly, has always had a pretty strong stance in the defense world, which is, for Europe, which I think a lot of people don't realize because, we go there for vacations. We don't think about it that way. But I want you to dive into mental performance, and you're a specialist at the University of Louisville. Why do they need that? And help us understand what that means and how it's applied in the practical world.
Yeah, very good question. Can I share like a small story?
Yeah, those are the best.
Yeah. So imagine, since this is basketball season, you go to the coach and you ask the coach, why do you think your player is making 9, 10 out of 10 of the free throws during practice? But then when the game matters, they're going down to 5 out of 10. And they usually say, it's mental. And then I take that and I'm like, oh, really? Okay. How much of your game is mental then? And I usually, the minimum I get as an answer is 60%. They can go up to 90%. And I'm like, okay, great. So then I use that and I'm like, how much of your practice is mental? And then there's silence, So boom, that's where the light bulb goes off. And the problem obviously for that athlete is not physical. She's not supposed to go take more free throws during practice the next day. Is about working with their mind and that mind-body connection. So pretty much that's what we do. we're trying to build that psychological infrastructure so people perform consistently when they have to face adversity in their that long journey that they may have trying to achieve some goals. So it's not just motivation that people may think is not hype. It's about developing sustainable, adaptable, ethical performance. And it's just the sports, right? It's tactical, performing arts, business, and beyond. So I think we'll get into more details as we go, but we're not mental health. And we're doing performance, but it's mental performance. So think as though we have to take them in the weight room of the mind and make some mental reps in there so they're strong when they need to perform under pressure.
Yeah. Quick kind of follow up here. Not everyone's on board with it. Like, you'd think that like, hey, here's this service that's available to, people to leverage within the system. And, some people are like, we don't need that. I don't want that. Help us understand like why someone might push back on that.
That is true. So this subdiscipline of psychology, sports psychology or performance psychology hasn't been applied for a long period of time. It's kind of a new thing, especially in collegiate athletics. And some coaches are more old school. I would say the biggest reason is they don't know what it is. And, when you don't know something, usually you're afraid of it. So as I said in the beginning, a lot of people think we're doing mental health, for example. That's not what we do. Or they think we're going to mess up the mindset of the athletes, or we're going to, whatever they're doing, we're going to make it worse. But I think that the most basic root of this misunderstanding is that they don't know what we're doing. If they knew what we were doing and how we're doing, how scientific it is, how evidence-based it is, they would jump in. But I'll tell you this, at UofL, although we have some resistance, as we'll have everywhere, we have the biggest team of mental health and mental performance in the world, and we are doing some great things. And I'm sure I'll expand as we go.
It's showing up on the court, for sure. Yeah, Jan.
So, Andreas, you practice existential positive psychology.
Yeah.
My understanding is that really means suffering to grow. Is there more? I mean, is there more to it than that?
Yeah, we're not going to have a strictly psychological discussion because everybody will fall asleep and you're going to lose all your audience, all your listeners. But we can even start in connected with what Jim said in the very beginning, that we both are from Louisville, and we ended up figuring out that we go to the same church, right? So even now, this period, there's Lent. Okay, and it just so happens now our Easter is on the same date with Catholic Easter. So a lot of people are practicing Lent right now. Why do they do that? One of the reasons we do that is because we understand that through stress, adversity, difficulty, we grow. You have to give something to get something. So if we want to take it to existential positive psychology, it's like the third, as we say, wave in psychology. But to be honest, between you and I, all these things were already known through philosophy. Greek philosophy, you're going to go to Chinese philosophy. But pretty much it says this: we started with traditional psychology. Traditional psychology is very reactive, and we need it when something bad happens. So at some point, we're like, okay, that's not the whole thing. What if, can we be proactive, and can we work with people's strengths? So that's how the second wave, the positive psychology, was born. Now, when we saw it from a little bit far away, we're like, wait a minute. Now we move the pendulum all the way to the other side. The truth is not on one side or the other side. We need both. So existential positive psychology says, yes, be proactive, work on your strengths. However, that trauma, stress, adversity that you go through, it has the potential for growth. And as we call it in existential positive psychology, self-transcendence.
Yeah.
So even in your darkest hour, there could be something that could help you grow and
Yeah.
become a better human.
And you use the term relevant adversity, and I think of the words I use often is crucible. And there's crucibles you create, and there's crucibles that are thrust upon you. Is that similar to what you mean by adversity, and then there's relevant adversity, or something? Am I missing?
No. I'll explain. I'll give an example. I gave it to a conference a few days ago, and everybody was laughing because they got it. Yes, adversity helps towards growth, and it has to be relevant. Let's say I take an athlete, and I'm like, you have to run a marathon. Is it difficult? Is it going to be adversity for the most people? Sure. But the athlete can turn around and be like, yeah, that was difficult, but why am I even doing that? I'm a diver. Yeah. So we're not looking for adversity just to look for adversity. You could do that if you had nothing to worry about in your life. Like if I had billions and billions of dollars and I had nothing to do, I would just try like, yeah, let's go hike that mountain or something. But most of the people have goals, and we need to take them through the process that would lead them to put them in a better position to be successful towards those goals. So it has to be relevant. Otherwise, the limited amount of resources that we all have, we just waste them to do things that don't really matter.
Yeah, I think one of the areas that's kind of fun is addressing the kind of misconceptions people have. And when people think of psychology, they think it's a soft and squishy thing, and it's, tell me about your feelings and, everything else. But there's so much more to it than that. And, we've had a number of guests talk about it. I remember Steve Drum talked a lot about this. Rich Diviney, another Navy SEAL, talked about this kind of stuff. This work and the work that you do involves a lot of data. Tell us about the data and what the data tells you.
Yeah. As I said before, psychology, we our methods and whatever we do is very evidence-based, which brings me to what you just said. We collect a lot of data, and there are three main ways that we collect data. It's either through questionnaires, observations, and interviews that we do, or the sessions that we have with our athletes and our coaches. All the data is showing that mental toughness is a multiplier. So we're doing a lot of work, and we have a lot of metrics that we work towards. As we said, it has to be relevant, right? So we do a lot of interventions to increase your mental toughness. So that's one thing we measure. Does my intervention, either team session or one-on-one session, work in terms of increasing your levels of mental toughness? That's great. That's not enough though, because when you're working with athletes, what's the goal? To win. So would it matter if my mental toughness would go up, but then the performance metrics of winning wouldn't go up? No. So it has to be translated on the field, on the ice ring, in the pool, whatever they work. So we measure all kinds of performance metrics, and all our data show that the people who have high levels of mental toughness on average have higher performance. And that performance could be anything. A lot of times we work with our athletes towards, let's say, accuracy in shooting. Great. But a lot of time we work towards social cohesion. It helps with that as well. We may work to lower screen time addiction in our athletes. We work with that too. Adherence in terms of protocols that have to do with recovery or sleep or hydration or diet plans. So it's a whole multiplier without, helps with a lot of things. So directly with the sport, but indirectly with a lot of things that support performance, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. In its simplest level, is mental toughness like discipline?
No, I wouldn't say it's discipline. It includes discipline, but it's much more than that. A way to describe it, and I can talk about that. And one of my goals is to create practical theories and theories of practice, because there's disconnect between, the research and the application. But a way to understand that is we're talking about a mindset. And that mindset has three pillars. The mentally tough mindset is purposeful, which means you know where you're going, there's direction, and there's energy towards those goals. That's the purposefulness. The mentally tough mindset has efficiency, which means there's a congruency between your behaviors and your goals. Otherwise, they're just dreams. And then there is flexibility. There's a very short amount of time between something unplanned and unpleasant, and you snapping out of it and moving on like nothing happened. So there's this mindset, and it can be manifested as discipline, but there's these three pillars, and we have 8 skills that we're working on. There's a lot of science behind it. Another way to see it is like this. When you have a goal, in order to achieve that goal, let's say you are leading a platoon, or you're leading a company, or you're leading a team, there are behaviors that you need to do in order to achieve that goal. So we have goals for direction, and we have behaviors that would lead you towards those goals. Behind that, one step before that, is the mindset. If you have that mindset, it will produce the behaviors consistently, and you have a very high probability of achieving those goals. The goals change, the behaviors evolve. There's only one mindset.
Love it.
That's how we teach it.
Love it. I know Jan's got some questions. Before we get there, I want to talk about some other mentally tough people. And those are our first responders, the people who are in the military, all the folks that keep us safe. And the people that serve them is our sponsor, Darlie. Darlie is a family-owned business in America's Midwest. They are amazing and wonderful people, and they support all our first responders, law enforcement, and the military around the globe. Learn more about them at darley.com. That's DARLEY.com.
Yeah. So Andreas, we know in leadership, it's a balance. It strengths are great until they detract, and then you've got to figure things out. And I wanted to ask you about if there is a dark side to mental toughness. I remember getting asked once, "Hey, when's it okay to quit?" And I didn't have a ready answer. I now have a better answer to that. But I'm wondering what your take on that is. Is too much grit not good?
Yeah. Yes, it's true. Like I'm a big proponent of mental toughness, but I will tell you, as anything else, that's a very good question. It has a dark side, and we've seen that. We've seen that. Let's say we have specific examples of athletes, for example, that they never quit, as you said, and they get injured. So that machismo mentality at a very extreme level, it kind of, you forget yourself, do everything for the team, a lot of times can lead to levels that are unhealthy or toxic. And I talked about the 8 skills that we're working on. For example, one is attention regulation. We're always talking about regulating your attention, blocking whatever is not important, and using whatever. If you are too attentive to one thing, though, and you think that's the thing, then you lose a lot of information. And the special forces, for example, or even in football, if you are a quarterback, that's how you get sacked. Emotional regulation. Yeah, we say always about regulating your emotion. But if you're doing it too much, first of all, people cannot understand from your facial expressions what you're feeling. And also, if you keep doing it, at some point, that's going to blow up.
Yeah.
So there's a limit.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. Do you think this might be controversial, but I'm wondering if one of the downsides of mental toughness is selfishness. When people are so focused on high performance, that it's all about them, their performance, achieving something great in athletics, being a soldier, whatever it might be. Is some of that selfish?
What is selfish?
It means it's all about them. It's all about their sleep, their food, their achieving high performance. Everybody supports them, and the goal is for them to have peak performance. But Are they really serving other human beings?
Well, again, that's a good question. I was just pushing you a little bit to define what we're talking about before we will go any further. But first of all, mental toughness is a personal construct. There's no team mental toughness. It's something that you have to work on yourself. I don't see it as something that necessarily is negative. I see it as empowering, meaning you have to work on yourself and don't start pointing fingers. You point your thumb and do what you need to do. Can you take it to a level that it looks that you don't care? Well, one of the good things about mental toughness is that an actual, real, mentally tough person can work with conflicting goals. That's how we say, or interests. So a lot of people want to be, let's say, a great athlete, but a great student as well. Can you do that? Can you work towards Olympics, but also go for an A+ in class? Some people want to be a great doctor, but they also want to be at home at 5 or have a business. So that's where it gets tricky, but that's where that pillar, those 3 pillars of the mindset will help you. It's not one thing and one thing only. I can see how you say that, but I wouldn't say that that person is mentally tough. I wouldn't characterize it as that. If you're very selfish and there's nothing else going on in your life.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I like that. When we got together, we had coffee a few weeks back. You said something interesting. I wrote it down in my notebook. I said, the entity cannot be more important than the humans that support it. And I really like that. Help us understand that statement and how that deals with the kind of resistance you might get within a company in between like behaviors and outcomes.
Yeah. So that line came from experience and a little bit from frustration. Too often we see organizations treat people as tools for outcomes instead of seeing outcomes as the byproduct of aligned, sustainable human behavior. So in a performance-driven environment, whatever that is, right? Healthcare, the military, sports, whatnot. There's a dangerous drift towards valuing what people produce over how they produce it. So metrics start to, in a way, overshadow mindset, and then the behavior becomes transactional. So that's the performance trap. So we reward results, even if they were achieved unethically or unsustainably, and we punish failure even if the process was sound and value aligned and we did the best we could under the circumstances. But the truth is this: outcomes are variable, markets shift, opponents adjust, life throws curveballs, but mindset can be trained, stabilized, and eventually applied across all of it. So that's why I focus more on the mentally tough mindset than actual the goal, because the goal is rarely 100% controlled just by one person. There are other things going on. So I value behavior and the mindset because you have to do the best you can do. And sometimes that doesn't produce results.
You know, so I totally, I mean, I love that. And I think that's something that's so important for anyone in the corporate world to hear. I want to kind of translate it into kind of like the sports equivalent. So here I am, like Chicago sports fan, love my Chicago sports teams. It's been a few years since we've had a lot of success. And one of the things we often hear from our, coaches and players is like, trust the process, which in some ways is talking about like, hey, let's, get the behaviors right. And the results will come, just be patient. And I get that because, you can't win every game, you can't, and of course, corporate America wants you to win the numbers game every quarter. But when we get to a point, as I did many times with my Bears and my Blackhawks and all the sports teams I follow, I start wondering about the process. When people start having those doubts, rightfully so, have we maybe not identified the right behaviors, or we're not focusing on the right behaviors?
I'll tell you that. I'll make a comment. I agree with you. So I'll say that about my work, and then I'll answer directly your question. In my work here and at the hospital, because I do also mental performance at the hospital, I forbid our coaches, leaders, and directors from talking about results or winning. I agree with you. They're only allowed to talk about behaviors of winning and losing. Why? Because then you put the focus on the controllables, as I said, and that's great because it empowers people, it lowers anxiety, it builds ownership. And those behaviors that come directly from that mindset that I said, purposefulness, efficiency, and flexibility. So when that's the standard, people know what's expected from them, no matter the result. The culture becomes behavior driven and value based, and performance becomes more consistent and stress goes down. So, and I'll say that on top of that, people will ask me, so you don't want to win? No, I do want to win. I'm telling you this, winning is there for direction, but there is a whole thing to happen in order to go there. So once we put it out there and put our specific goal metrics, we don't look at them again. We focus on the behaviors. Now, identifying the right behaviors, as you said, when I'm working with a coach, let's say Phil Halke. I don't know Phil Halke, I'm from Greece. Right? But so if they say this is what we need to do, I'm like, okay. So assuming, as you said, that the behaviors are right, then if they don't work, my question is, you either something messed it up in your mindset. You weren't purposeful, or flexible, and or efficient. So let's find that's where the root of the problem is. So we go backwards. Our goals, we'll figure out the goals, we'll figure out the behaviors, and then we'll go back to the mindset. The mindset is great because it will show us the why you were successful or not successful.
Love it.
Yeah. We've had a lot of guests on lately that have talked about artificial intelligence, AI, of course. And, we've had guests on recently that talked about how AI can really help identify behaviors and hear biases and, assumptions and different things. I'm wondering, are you using AI to help modify behaviors? And more importantly, my question is, can AI be used to help develop mindset that leads to the behaviors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I see AI the way I see any high performance tool. So it's not here to replace humans, it's here to serve the human. And to paraphrase something I heard with in another profession, AI will not replace psychologists or sports psychologists. AI will replace sports psychologists that don't know about, sports psychologists who know AI will replace sports psychologists who don't know AI.
Yes.
But that's how I see it. I'm actually currently finishing another degree in AI in medicine, and I'm trying to learn more about that as much as I can and building my own application. Not because I want to remove myself from the whole process, but because I want to scale what works. So if my framework helps people under pressure, and we talked about different kind of contexts, right? It can be people who are first responders. You can be again the military. It can be in business. It can be in anything. Then the question is, how can I deliver that to more people more consistently with less friction? Because also people who think mental performance is a little bit mental health, there is a little bit of stigma over there. So if I had an app and I could do it by myself, maybe we could reach out to more people. So that's where AI comes in, and I'm trying to build like a practical theory. I told you about the pillars. I told you about the 8 core skills. I told you about the model that we're using. And obviously that is grounded in existential positive psychology. So AI, if we do that, would allow us to detect behavioral patterns. Like if you were using it, it will see your lapses in attention or emotion regulation, and it really learn you. It could provide real-time nudges grounded in your individual data, generate timely prompts to support regulation, reflection, personalize your experience. So the app learns you instead of you adapting to it. And then that transforms mental toughness training from something, sporadic into something embedded, continuous and stable. So I see a lot of practicality. I see a lot of support to what I do, and I see a lot of benefits in terms of spreading out to support more and more people that are in high pressure, high demand, high stake environments.
Yeah. To me, it's kind of where we were 20 years ago, where there was so much information and we're consuming and we're trying to figure out, how do we sort and catalog and only consume what we need. And it seems like, I don't know if you found this, but when you're using AI, you're like a child. You keep asking why, and you keep with the prompts, and then you're like, all of a sudden an hour's gone by and you've dug in more detail than you need to. I still go back to, we're still going to have to exercise judgment in how we use these tools.
Sure.
And I I wonder if AI can teach us better judgment.
That's a big question, but I'll tell you, you almost became the third Greek in the company. That's the Socratic method. You keep asking why until you figure it out, right? But yeah, so that was good. But again, this is what I'm trying to say, that if we had an app, for example, AI, right, and it's grounded in something solid, like theories that we know they work, not something that's just motivational, and then it adapts to your patterns. Because I can only, how many times I'll come here, and will I remember if you keep coming here for 5 years what you said 3 years ago? I can't. And there's so many people coming in. It's like we talked about data. Sometimes we have big data, big-ish data, like 50,000 people and 1,000 variables. I cannot go over that Excel sheet by myself. So the more you play with the app, the more data you put in, and that will detect some patterns that I can't remember. I already use it. I have created my own GPTs. I'm trying a lot of things, and it brings up things that I forgot. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, John said that. Oh yeah, he said that the second time he came here, I completely forgot, and connects dots that my mind cannot, because I can't retain all that information. So it can help. Now, could it be used unethically? Sure, as everything that could have a lot of power. But again, assuming we use it to serve the human, I think it can help us scale and reach out and help a lot of people.
Yeah. I really appreciate this conversation, Andreas. I really have enjoyed this. I know that if I don't hear from our glorious supporter, Mark Palmieri, about this one, I'll be shocked, because he's going to love this episode. But Andreas, thank you for being on the show. Do you have any closing thoughts for us, for our listeners, and maybe a challenge to put out there?
Challenge. Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for having me. It was fun. You told me it would be fun. It was fun. And I can talk about these things for days. No, I want to challenge people to ask those 3 questions every day, every night, and every morning. Make a promise in the morning, actually, and then ask a question. Today I will be purposeful, so I know what I need to do, and all my energy is going there without distractions. For example, phone or anything else that may happen in our world. I'm going to be very efficient, so my behaviors are going to match my goals today, and I'm going to be flexible. No matter what happens, I will smile and I will say, what a great opportunity. What is this trying to teach me? How is this trying to make me grow? And then at night, ask these 3 questions. Was I purposeful today? Was I flexible today? Was I efficient today? If I was, keep doing what you were doing. If you weren't, what do you need to fix? And back at it the next day. Have those mental reps. And I'm telling you, if you develop that mindset, no matter where you are, no matter what happens, it doesn't really matter about the context. It will help you achieve goals consistently, and you will have a happier life, a more successful life, and a less stressful life. So that's for all the people that are listening to this.
And I kind of go back to what Jim asked you earlier. In order to do that, you have to have a certain degree of self-discipline.
True. That is at least the discipline to ask those questions day and night.
Yeah.
There you go. Andreas, thank you for being on our show.
Thank you for having me, John. Thank you, Jim.
And before I get to our quote, I do want to say a big shout out to Mark Palmari, because he sent us a note today and forwarded something. And just want to say thank you, Mark, for being a big fan.
He is a glorious human.
A glorious human.
Yeah.
And that's all we have for you this week. And of course, we will provide ways for you to connect with Andreas in our show notes. So you can find those at theleadershippodcast.com. And the quote from Jim this week is, "Nothing can stop the man with the right mental attitude from achieving his goal. Nothing on earth can help the man with the wrong mental attitude." Thomas Jefferson.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Podcast. To listen to more shows or to access the books and content discussed on this show, be sure to visit theleadershippodcast.com. The material in this podcast is copyright by Rafti Advisors and Self-Reliant Leadership and must have written approval before commercial application.